stepping into the frozen realm, a journey of a lifetime. I have always carried a dream within me, to set foot on the farthest, coldest, and least known place on Earth, Antarctica. That place is not just an endless white ocean, giant glaciers, or adorable penguins. It is a symbol of exploration, of humanity's relentless spirit to conquer the unknown. But Antarctica is not a destination you can simply book a flight to on a whim. It demands opportunity, luck, and a truly compelling reason to be there. Then one day, my phone rang. A vibrant voice from the organization Future of Space invited me to join them on a one-of-a-kind expedition to Antarctica. I didn't hesitate. A dream that once felt distant suddenly came within reach. And so the journey began, not just a voyage across geography, but a profound exploration of the mind, the emotions, and the humbling realization of how small we are before the grandeur of nature. Chapters of Antarctic Discovery. Journey to Antarctica. A dream come true. The journey began not with a step, but with a message and invitation that arrived like a whisper from destiny. It was from the Future of Space organization, a group known for pushing the boundaries of human exploration, from the depths of our oceans to the edges of the universe. The email subject line alone sent shivers down my spine. An invitation to join a landmark expedition to Antarctica. I remember staring at the screen in disbelief, my fingers frozen over the keyboard. Could this be real? Antarctica had always been more than a place on a map to me. It was a symbol, a canvas of white mystery painted in dreams since childhood. I had once stood in front of a classroom globe, spinning it until my finger landed on the bottom of the world. "I'll go there someday," I had whispered. Now, decades later, the moment had arrived. Excitement bloomed like spring in my chest. I turned to my wife, her eyes wide as she read the email over my shoulder. Travis, our son, erupted with joy at the mention of icebergs, penguins, and GoPro footage. For our family, this wasn't just a trip, it was a pilgrimage. The weeks that followed were filled with anticipation and preparation. We shopped for thermal wear, read books on polar survival, and binged documentaries about Shackleton, Amundsen, and modern expeditions. My wife carefully packed our gear, making sure every thermal sock and hand warmer was accounted for. Travis couldn't stop talking about drone shots and wildlife. But what made the journey even more surreal were the names on the expedition roster. William Shatner, Scott Kelly, Charlie Duke, Brian Greene. These weren't just celebrities, they were living legends. People who had walked on the moon, orbited Earth for nearly a year, and inspired generations through science and storytelling. When we boarded the aircraft that would take us to South America, my heart pounded with anticipation. I looked out the window, watching the world drift below. The clouds parted occasionally to reveal rivers, cities, and eventually the icy outline of the land we were destined for. This was not a vacation, it was a transformational voyage. Remarkable companions. The first person I met upon boarding our polar vessel was none other than William Shatner. At 93, he exuded a calm presence that seemed to blend wisdom and curiosity. His voice, instantly recognizable, filled our dining hall with stories of space, science fiction, and what it meant to stand at the threshold of the unknown. Despite his fame, Shatner was approachable, humble, and endlessly inquisitive. Scott Kelly was a different, energy-disciplined, precise, and intensely observant. The man who spent nearly a year aboard the International Space Station had a gaze that seemed to evaluate everything as if from orbit. Yet when he spoke of his time in space, it wasn't with detachment, it was with reverence. He drew parallels between the isolation of Antarctica and the solitude of space, often reminding us of the resilience of the human spirit. Charlie Duke brought with him the air of the Apollo missions. One of only 12 humans to have walked on the moon, he shared stories that sounded like science fiction but were etched in history. He described the silence of the lunar surface, the Earthrise he saw from orbit, and the sense of fragility one feels standing on another world. And then there was Brian Greene, a physicist, author, and philosophical navigator of the cosmos. Conversations with him drifted from string theory to the meaning of exploration. He had a way of making the unknowable feel familiar, of grounding abstract ideas in emotional truths. Each night, as we gathered in the ship's observation lounge, stories flowed like Antarctic wind. We laughed, we pondered, we listened. It felt less like a group of travelers and more like a council of dreamers. And all the while, the icy horizon crept closer. Ushuaia, gateway to Antarctica. Perched at the edge of the world, Ushuaia was a town of paradoxes, rugged yet cozy, remote yet vibrant. As the southernmost city on Earth, it bore the weight of both ends and beginnings. The streets were lined with colorful homes, windswept trees, and cafes where adventurers from every continent gathered. The air was crisp with the scent of sea salt and possibility. Mountains loomed behind us like ancient sentinels. The Beagle Channel stretched out ahead, a shimmering path to the unknown. It was here that the gravity of our journey truly hit me. Every step forward would take us farther from the familiar and deeper into the extraordinary. Our team spent 2 days in Ushuaia, preparing the vessel, checking equipment, and sharing meals in local taverns, where maps adorned the walls and weathered explorers recounted their own tales. I remember sitting in a corner booth, sipping mate tea, while Shatner recited lines from Shakespeare and Greene, explained how time might bend near a black hole. Locals treated us with reverence, knowing we were bound for a land few dared to approach. They spoke of the Drake Passage, with the kind of respect reserved for ancient gods a trial that no one conquers, only survives. When we finally boarded our ice-class ship, the wind howled across the port like a voice from the past. I gripped my wife's hand. Travis looked at the horizon through his camera, capturing the moment before the plunge. Crossing the Drake Passage. The real challenge. The Drake Passage greeted us not with welcome, but with wrath. Waves towered like skyscrapers, heaving our ship with the rhythm of a titan's heartbeat. Each creak of the hull, each gust of wind, reminded us that nature was not to be tamed. Most of us spent the first day in our bunks, seasick and humbled, but even through the discomfort, I marveled at the power of the sea. I thought of the early explorers Magellan, Cook, Shackleton, who faced these waters in wooden ships without modern navigation or weather forecasts. They had only courage and the stars to guide them. Scott Kelly, ever the astronaut, likened the journey to launch turbulence. He joked that at least in space, you float. Charlie Duke chuckled and shared how Apollo capsules shook with the fury of re-entry. Even in misery, we found camaraderie. But it wasn't all chaos. On the third day, the storm relented, and the sea turned silver under the pale sun. We emerged from our cabins, faces pale, but eyes wide. We gathered on the deck, wrapped in layers, watching icebergs drift like ghost ships in the distance. In that moment, I felt something shift. Beyond the nausea, beyond the fear, lay awe, raw, untamed beauty, the kind that breaks you open and then rebuilds you. As we approached the Antarctic Peninsula, a silence fell over the ship. Not of absence, but of reverence. The white continent rose like a cathedral from the sea vast, indifferent and magnificent. We had made it. The journey to Antarctica was not just a milestone in my life, it was a defining chapter in my journey of self-discovery. I had reached the farthest, coldest land on Earth, yet also the purest and most untouched. There, I learned how to slow down, observe more deeply, and listen to the quiet details that often go unnoticed in our fast-paced modern world. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to Future of Space for opening the door to this extraordinary experience. Thank you to my companions, living symbols of wisdom, courage, and relentless curiosity. And most of all, thank you to nature, to Antarctica, for allowing us to step into your world, even if only for a fleeting moment. If you are reading these words, let yourself keep dreaming. Be curious, ask questions, and be brave enough to step into the unknown. There is still so much wonder in the world waiting to be discovered. And perhaps one day you will be the one to tell the story of your own journey to a place that today lives only in your imagination. Keep going. Keep exploring.